Novels are packs of lies and inventions. There is an emotional and an intellectual truth.
Wir sind auf Long Island zu Besuch bei Louis Begley und seiner Frau Anka Muhlstein. Der amerikanische Schriftsteller hat viele literarische Preise erhalten. Angesichts seiner erzählerischen Eleganz fühlen sich Kritiker an Proust und Thomas Mann erinnert. Sein erster Roman, Lügen in Zeiten des Krieges, wurde sofort zu einem Weltbestseller. Weitere Romane folgten. In seinem Sommerhaus spreche ich nun mit dem Autoren über sein Leben und sein Werk. Good morning, Mr. Begley.
Good morning, Christiane.
We are sitting here in this light-flooded living room in your beautiful house in Sagaponack on Long Island. Thank you for your invitation.
We're delighted to have you here.
You lead a good life.
I lead a wonderful life.
So, and you survived a dreadful time. So, let's talk about your debut. It's called Wartime Lies, and it is a global success, rewarded with many literary prizes. And when you started to write your first book, you were already 56. What brought you to write a novel?
Well, I think that, sometimes things simmer inside you. And they simmer and they simmer. And the moment comes when they're cooked. Mm. And so I think the story that I tell in Wartime Lies had been there inside me. And I wasn't, if you say 56, you are already 56.
Yes.
From the vantage point of almost 81, 56 seems very young. so anyway, I had a sabbatical, and on the first day of that sabbatical, which was in 1st of August, 89, I began to write Wartime Lies. And I just kept writing. Mm. The story kept coming out. I had done no research to prepare for it. I have no journals. I have no notes, and so I had to keep on looking up where the Eastern Front was, at what time, at what moments. I had to keep looking at the atlas to put in my head where T and Lvov and the other places I talk about might have been.
And by the way, in Wartime Lies as well, when the novel starts, you describe how this boy rode coaches together with his grandfather.
Yes.
So
there were similar things in my life. As I've said ad nauseam, this is not an autobiography, but in all my books, I use things that I have experienced and have seen and lived, but I use them the way if you were making a quilt, a patchwork quilt. You have a little piece of fabric and you get another piece of fabric and you sew them together and you come out with a quilt. Well, I take a little bit of this and a little of that and I come out with the story. Mm.
I would like to know, do you have any memories to the wartime?
You mean during the war?
During the war?
Certainly.
You have?
Well, I say they begin with the German attack, because my father was called up for army service. He was a reserve officer. And my mother, both sets of grandparents, as I recall it, and some aunts, I don't know who else, we headed for the Romanian border in a sort of a motorcade, several cars. And we weren't the only ones. The roads leading to Romania were crowded with people trying to flee. And German Stukas,
yes,
from time to time, would appear and they had nothing better to do than to machine gun us. And so, you know, I would jump out of cars, and people jumped out of wagons and coaches, whatever they were in, and lay down in the ditches. And sometimes people were hit by gunfire. We weren't. So that was a very distinct memory. We then turned around, actually, and went right back home, which was probably a dreadful decision, but that's what my mother decided.
Did these experiences you just mentioned traumatize you?
Well, you know, I think that's everything in life traumatizes one. I think the passage through the birth canal traumatizes one. Those experiences traumatized me, certainly, but all sorts of things traumatized me, and I keep on being traumatized every day, except I've become a great deal tougher.
Ah, yeah. So you dedicated Wartime Lies to your mother. How did she respond to it?
Well, my mother was shocked by that novel, and she hated it because she thought that if I were going to write about that period, I should have consulted with her at every step of the way about what I said and what I didn't say, and I should have been truthful instead of telling lies, because the book is full of lies. Lies in the sense that novels are packs of lies and inventions. There is an emotional and an intellectual truth to what I say, but descriptions are not necessarily descriptions of things that happened. Sometimes they are. People who appear in my novels have in them some pieces of people whom I've known or have observed. Well, is that truth or is it a lie? That's how novels are made. They're made from things that you pick up here and there, and then you put them together.
So novels have their own truths because the writer transforms experiences and observations into literature.
Exactly. As you'd say, genau so.
Genau. With 13, you and your parents moved to the US. Your achievement in the New World was impressive. You got a scholarship for the Ivy League University, Harvard. You finished your study in English literature with summa cum laude. And you had already published short stories. So why didn't you become a writer then?
Well, really because I thought that in order to be a writer, one had to have something to say. And I did not think that I had anything to say. So the best thing to do was to postpone the decision, and I went to the army instead.
Yes, you went to the army and you served in the US Army, and in 1955 you were based in Göppingen, Germany, for 18 months. And how did you feel about coming to Germany? Did you like it?
Well, I loved coming to Germany as a victor. I loved to see Germany defeated. I loved to see bombed buildings. I loved it. The more ruins there were, the happier I was. Toward the end of my stay, I met some young people, some young Germans, actually a couple of young women who were very much interested in music and art and literature, and I would have coffee with them. They worked on the army base in the library.
Did you like the German women?
I like all women of all nationalities.
Did you tell your friends that you were a Jew and nearly killed by the Germans?
I don't think so.
Why not?
Well, I did not want to provoke scenes.
Mm-hmm. Because you are polite, or?
I suppose it was a mixture of my politeness, my sense that it would have poisoned my stay in Göppingen to do that, because I had had the experience in the United States of an almost total lack of interest on the part of people I was with in my past.
Yeah.
Now people talk about the Holocaust all the time.
But at those time you didn't.
At that time people didn't. So far as people were concerned, I was a refugee. What kind of refugee? Polish refugee. Polish Jewish refugee, fine. Polish Jewish refugee. But just what had happened was not of any particular interest, and I felt I'm a mixture of being very bold and also being very shy.
Yes. And you were in Germany in the 50s, where the country and the Germans suppressed their past and denied it. And so, very amazing, not until 2006, the German writer Günter Grass revealed in his memoirs Beim Häuten der Zwiebel that he was member of the Waffen-SS. This came into his mind in 2006, after he made a career as a writer.
He'd been very busy. Very busy writing books, making political statements, being the moral censor of modern Germany.
He was a moral censor, so how do you respond to this?
He didn't have time to think about the Waffen-SS. How do I respond to it? Well, I think he had a big nerve. I don't know how he possibly thought that it would never come to the surface. Well, I was thinking at the time of his friendship with Paul Celan, and Celan's wartime experiences, and Celan's extraordinary nobility of soul, and I thought at the time, how would Celan have felt if he had known that his buddy Günther had been in the Waffen-SS? And to have concealed that from Celan seemed to me much graver, much more blameworthy than practically anything else.
Why?
Because it was a breach of a personal trust, a personal relationship.
When you did and do visit Germany, you always went out of the way people who were old enough to bear arms. How did it come that you made friends with your German publisher Siegfried Unseld, though?
It was actually a rather funny story. I'd never heard of Siegfried Unseld, and I'm ashamed to say I'd never heard of Suhrkamp.
Yes.
But one day I was at my office, and my agent called me and said, there is a Dr. Unseld and a Dr. Berkewitz who would like to come to see you.
His wife.
Yes. Well, I said to myself, that's nice. A pair of German academics want to visit me.
Yeah.
And so they arrived, and there was kind of a friendly giant, Dr. Unseld, and a ravishing beauty, Dr. Berkewitz. And then they explained to me that they weren't academics, that Suhrkamp was a publishing house.
A very renowned one, by the way.
Yes, I know it's very renowned. I think it may be the best house in Europe. But they explained they wanted to publish Wartime Lies, and I can't remember whether I invited them to the house during that visit or not, but soon Anka also met them, and of course there was something about Siegfried that you knew that when he embraced you, he took you into your heart, and it was impossible not to take him into your heart. He said he never published a book without meeting the author, because he didn't publish books, he published authors. And so that's why the visit.
So, and then with Wartime Lies, you started a new career as a writer. Nevertheless, you never stopped being a lawyer. Why?
Well, I loved being a lawyer. I enjoyed my profession. I had a very good time. I had clients whom I loved serving. Cases interested me. I saw no reason to stop.
So you have written the Schmidt trilogy, and let's talk about this guy, Albert Schmidt, Schmitty. The first novel is called About Schmidt, and where he appears, and this was made into a Hollywood movie with Jack Nicholson.
Well, I think the film is terrific, very good, and I think that Jack Nicholson in that film gives, I think, the performance of his life. I believe he's never been better in any film.
How did this character emerge?
How did he emerge? He came into my mind actually as I used to walk up and down the beach in Sagaponack and think about life, various people I knew. And I was at an age when loss of people one loved, loss of friends, loss of one's profession, if one retired, these were subjects that were perplexing me, worrying me. It's a paradox that in my novels there are not many happy relationships between parents and children, except that in Mistler's Exit, Mistler has a deep relationship with his son. So the relationship with Charlotte, and then of course John Riker, the son-in-law. Sons-in-law are a big problem anyway, and in this case the guy was Jewish. Really?
This would be my next question. I mean, Schmitty turns out to be an anti-Semite.
He's not really an anti-Semite.
Yeah, but all his prejudices.
He is a man of his generation and of his class. Anti-Semitism was enormously widespread. Schmidt, this is taking place in the 50s, and in the 50s, a man like Schmidt, who was not an anti-Semite. In fact, he was very happy to be very nice to Jews. He helped his son-in-law become a partner in his law firm. He had no active animosity, but he did not exactly expect a Jew to become a member of his family.
And why not?
Well, because it just wasn't something that was a part of his life plan. You know, there is a big difference between anti-Semitism that is active and aggressive, and the kind of anti-Semitism I'm describing there, which used to be known as polite anti-Semitism. And although he himself had no difficulty being with Jews and so on and so forth, his only daughter marrying a Jew was
not appropriate.
Was a shock. Moreover, he thought that while Riker was a very good lawyer and so forth, he did not pass an ultimate test of being a good guy. And Schmidt was right about it, as it turned out. So there.
So this is very interesting what you say, because what you are saying, because this makes Schmitty authentic, like a real person. It's like as if I would meet
Eureka.
Schmitty.
Eureka, you figured it out.
Yeah. So when you regard yourself, what was your greatest achievement in life?
Marrying Anka, my wife.
Oh. May I ask why?
Because she's so absolutely marvelous. She has been the best imaginable wife. She's been the best imaginable mother to my children. She makes my life a continuous stream of happiness.
And she herself is as well, she is an historian and a writer. So did she encourage you to write the first novel?
Well, when she did not say to me, "Hey Louis, you should write a novel." But when I began to write my novel, she was very glad that I was doing it. And as she's always my first reader. And so as I wrote, I would show her what I was doing, and she was very encouraging of it.
Does she, when she is the first reader, does she make some suggestions to change things?
Indeed, indeed.
And how do you respond to this?
Well, very gratefully. She is not someone who tells you who tries to fix your sentences or deals with petty things. But I usually ask her whether what I'm writing is boring, for instance.
Ah, okay.
Well, she so far she has never found what I was writing boring. In certain very important instances, I ask her whether she thinks that what I've invented is psychologically plausible. And she's very good about that.
I know writers who don't like it to be
criticized. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't like to be criticized by fools, but I show my things first of all to Anka. Then there's my son Adam, who is a wonderful critic. My mother, when she wasn't happy about Wartime Lies, she said, "Why do you need to write? You're a lawyer, practice law. Why do you need to write books? Stop it." Well, sometimes I think she's so right. I should have just...
But the question remains, why do you write books?
As a matter of fact, I'm extremely vain. And when I finished Wartime Lies, I had this thought that it's perfectly shameful to be someone who only wrote one novel. So I had better write another novel. So I sat down and wrote novel 2, The Man Who Came, Who Was Late. Then I said, why, it would be very shaming not to be able to keep going. So I've kept going, because what would it mean if I stopped? What could it possibly mean? That there was no water in the well, or that...
But what does this attitude has to do with vanity?
You know, Nabokov said that seeing your book on a bookstore shelf was the conclusive proof of your existence. And maybe writing a book, finishing a book, is also a conclusive proof of your existence.